thought behind that, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, helping non-safety executives turn morning huddles into high-performance leadership moments without adding a minute to their schedule. No other than Mr. Paul Espenan.
Thank you, Daniel. Good to be here with you.
Welcome, Mr. Paul. Likewise, and thank you so much for being part of an abstract essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I
Sure. Very glad to. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and spent a lot of time growing up there and graduated from Louisiana State University. And then began a career not long after that in the energy business. And along the way, while I was in the energy business, leading environmental health, safety, and regulatory, I also became an entrepreneur of sorts. I run a hydroponic farm in Denver, Colorado. I'm also a realtor and recently have become an author. But most of my career has been focused on keeping people safe and coaching leaders about how they can be authentic and how they can lead well and how they can be transformational leaders, especially in the area of keeping people safe. So that's been my life mission and vocation. And with the recent release of my book, my hope is that this book will become something that readers will actually live, that they will
Mm,
understand these stories. I collect stories, by the way, Daniel, and I use them to make a point. And that's really a lesson that I've learned is that people learn through stories. And if we can give a good, compelling story, they're more likely to listen.
definitely. So, are you talking about the heart and soul of safety, Mr. Paul?
I am, yes. New release, and it's a book that is a series of stories, and
Okay.
that basically it takes stories from history and stories from my life to make a point about authentic leadership and, in particular, safety leadership. And so, this book is actually written for business leaders who don't know much about safety. They don't know how to lead authentically when it comes to safety. And this is a way for them to make it their own. It has to be their own. It's a workbook of sorts where they can take some of these stories and customize them to their own, and then offer them in a way that they can then get people to open up and have more powerful conversations. And so this this book got written. If I might, I'll tell you how it happened.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I joined my current work about 6 years ago, I wanted to give something to inspire people. And in doing that, I began to give leadership moments on our operations calls every week. And after a while, people said, "Wow, the story you told was so good, and everything you said was so wonderful. I'm very fired up and excited about what you said." And then not long after that, my boss mentioned on one of the calls, he says, "Hey," he says, "when are you going to write a book?" And so I said, well, maybe I ought to start writing them down because up to that point, I hadn't been writing them down. And so I began to write them down. And then I collected stories and more and more. And so I delivered these messages over the last 5 or 6 years, one a week. And in this book, I took the best of the best stories and lessons and life lessons and distilled them down to very short form, very manageable, easy to read format, where people can read those and get fired up and excited about being safe and leading authentically. And I make the point in the book about this is that there really is no difference between being a good leader and running a company well and being a good safety leader and having a safe company. They all go together. They are never different. If you show me a safe company, I will be looking at a very well run one. And if you show me a well run company, it will be a very safe one.
Said, very well said, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Paul. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And because of that, let's talk about the book itself. And on Book 101 review, let's talk about the writing process. Okay,
You
so
bet.
tell us, your book title uses two words we don't often hear in the same sentence: safety, heart of the soul. After 35 years in the oil and gas industry, an environment of high risk, heavy machinery, and hard data, what led you to believe that the safest part of a human experience are actually the key of safety performance?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question, Daniel. Thank you. Uh, every one of us has something waiting for us at the end of the day. And I call that our what matters most. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your pet, maybe it's all of your hobbies. But all of us have something waiting for us at the end of the day. And I thought that and I do believe that if people just remember what's at stake, that would be highly motivating. It would be something that would cause them to want to work well and be safe. The problem is that we're human and we get distracted and we forget who's counting on us when it's whether it's our family or our coworkers or others that we serve. We forget what's at stake, and in that moment when we forget, that's when incidents occur. But making the appeal to the heart, to me, seemed like the way that you could sustain it. So, for example, if I say to you, Daniel, there's a rule about safety, you're not going to speed in your car. Uh, it's very hard to ever not go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Most people can't do it forever. They could do it for a while, but they can't sustain it. But Daniel, when you get to the point where you do it because it's who you are, then you have owned it. And it's through these types of stories that come from the heart when people realize what they really want to be, that they can make these good, safe decisions. And often it's in the form of a question like this: Daniel, what do you want people to say about you? What do you want people to think about you? Even being so morbid to say, imagine your own funeral and people get up to say something about you. What are they going to say? Whatever they do say, and you want them to say, that's your life motivation. Those are the things that matter most to you. And I think most people would answer that question themselves and say, I want people to say that I'm safe, that I care about them, and that I'm working safe because I know what's at stake. If anyone would ever doubt what their loved one would say about working safe, all they have to do is call them. And, they might ask them, hey, I'm thinking about taking a shortcut or taking the easy way or speeding. And I'm willing to bet that that loved one would say, don't do it.
Well said, Mr. Paul. You've held leadership roles at Halliburton, ConocoPhillips, and now as SVP of SSG and HSE at Diversified Gas and Oil. Across all those contexts, was there a specific moment, an incident, a conversation, a failure that made you realize safety could not be reduced to compliance alone?
Yeah, there's It's unfortunate, Daniel, that I've had to investigate when things have gone wrong. There was one story in particular I'll tell you. There was a gentleman at a gas plant. This is where natural gas is processed, and he was working in the plant, and he had to go to a device that is a emergency shutdown, and he was going to work on it. And the process would be that he would always call the control room and say, "Hey, I'm going to be working on this device. Deactivate it." And on this particular day, he didn't do that. Well, when we investigated it, what it turned out is that this gentleman had the very unpleasant task over the prior weekend of having to, he was a volunteer fireman, and he went into a building that had burned and had to remove the deceased body of a very dear friend as part of his duties as a firefighter. So then he came to work on Monday, and everybody saw that he was not himself, but yet they didn't ask, "Hey, what's going on? What's wrong?" They didn't have permission to ask about his personal life. So on Tuesday, when he shut the plant down and acted out something out of character, uh, it, that investigation turned out that it was because he was carrying around that mental baggage of what happened that weekend with his dear friend dying. And so this is the realization, as you ask, that safety is something very personal, and each of us carries around personal junk, if you will. And any of that personal junk can prevent us from being at our best, whether it's the way that we work, how we're performing, how good we're doing. But especially when it comes to being safe, we can have an incident because our mind is elsewhere. And so there's an appeal to be present to our work and be mindful. And we've even gone to such lengths as to literally teach workers in an industrial environment how to meditate so that they can uh, get their mind focused on the work at hand. And it's through these type of experiences, which I've had a number of, that you come to realize that safety cannot be boiled down to compliance with a procedure or a rule or anything of that face. It has to be personal. It has to be emotional. It has to be related to our hearts. And so I hope that helps you to understand that there's been cases where it's horrible when things go wrong, but in the end, you ask a question: what is it about all of us that allowed this to occur? And often the answer is we didn't allow our hearts to motivate us. We didn't talk about the things that matter to us in life. We didn't have an honest conversation with the people involved. And then something terrible happened because we didn't communicate. Hope that answers your question.
Indeed, Mr. Paul, indeed. One of the most important questions a safety leader can ask is, do I have a high expectations? A force of hope. You've spent your career in an industry where hope can sound naive. How do you hold both the clear eyed realism about risk and the hopeful belief that people can be better than they
Yeah.
are?
Yeah, that's really good question. And Daniel, maybe you've heard the expression, "Hope is not a strategy," and that relates to the hard truths of business, where we have to have a business plan and a finance plan and a way to execute it. But in the end, along the lines of the story I was just telling, is that if individuals get distracted and they have all that junk that's dragging them down for whatever reason, but they have to have hope that things will get better. And it is through that hope that all of us can realize that we can persevere, we can carry on. One of the stories that I tell in the book of the book, The Wizard of Oz. And Frank had went through so mmany different professions before he turned to writing children's books. And he was at his wits' end. He went bankrupt, he went broke, he went through so many different things until he figured out that he was good at writing children's books. But he passed away before the famous movie The Wizard of Oz was made. He never uh, he never saw it, but he had great hopes his whole life that good would come from something that he endeavored to do, and he never ever lost hope because he just hung on to that because hope doesn't disappoint, and we know that that's the case. So, of all the things that could happen to us in our lives, we will always have hope. And that's one of the stories that I really enjoyed telling in this book about how hope can help us to let go of our personal junk and focus on the moment and be safe.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Paul. You achieve a measurable results: 25% reduction in methane intensity. UN gold standard recognition while also focusing on the heart of safety. How do you respond to the skeptic who says this is soft? What is the business case for leading with heart?
Well, everybody has tried everything else. Authentic leadership is a necessary ingredient because people can tell if someone is not being genuine. I've been told a number of times when I get up and I speak in front of groups that people can sense that I am sincere when I speak. And that just proves that if we're ever trying to be someone that we're not, people can tell. And so while we could read a book that tells us to be a certain way, we could be told by friends or a coach or a mentor to be a certain way when we lead. In the end, if we're not ourselves, we're not being authentic, and people will know. They'll call us phony, and we won't earn their trust. And so that's been my experience is that in getting results, if you ask people to help you, they will. If you ask people for advice, they will give it to you, and then they have a vested interest in your success. It's a very interesting psychological phenomenon. Daniel, if I ask you for advice and you give it to me, now you would like to see me succeed. So the very important part is that I listen to you and that I ask for your advice and then I take it. And it's those type of authentic conversations where I get to know you as a person, what you can offer me, and what your interests are in life. At that level, I'm no longer your boss or your leader. I'm just a person who cares about you. And the famous adage, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's the single most important thing that a leader has to have. So once people know that you do care about them as a person and an individual, you'd be surprised how far they'll go to help you be successful. So I could tell you that without question, all of my success in life is because I've helped others be successful first. And then they in turn want to return the favor and they want to help me. So hope that answers your question, but it's really that simple.
Indeed, Mr. Paul, indeed. You've said that safety leadership is about doing something, making changes before someone gets hurt. to force you to make the change. That's provocative, not reactive. How does leading from the heart make the leader more proactive rather than just more sentimental?
Yeah, I think that if we understand that when we make business decisions that we're impacting people's lives, and then imagine what that impact is if we don't act. I think that's a very powerful motivator to know that. I mean, I tell myself a lot of times if I'm thinking about making an ask of something, I begin to consider, well, what's the impact on the individuals, and or if I'm wanting to get better, what's the motivation? And so, in a cold, hard business approach, you might not consider these things. At its heart, need to be empathetic and having to understand what others are going through is going to be the way of success. And it's not something that is talked about a lot in business performance, but people like Brene Brown and others have talked about being vulnerable. And by being vulnerable, we realize that we're all just human, and that vulnerability is a very, very powerful leadership trait, because people will realize that you're not just some great person who is going to lord it over on them, but you're just a normal person who wants success. And so by leading from the heart, we can show that vulnerability. And then also in that moment, be very, very compelling and motivate and inspire to people because it's so rare. Think about this: if you're the only one who's talking about these things, they're going to seek you out, because all of us, Daniel, are attracted to things that are good, true, and beautiful. Those are the transcendentals. All of us are drawn to that. So if we're good, true, and beautiful as human beings, people are going to want to know what you got going on. They're going to want to know how they can lead like you are, and then you set a great example, and they follow you. A leader is not a leader if they don't have followers.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Paul. Dan Johnson of Skansa once said, I believe there's always something else about there to be discovered about safety. What is something else you were still discovering after 35 years, Mr.
Yeah,
Paul?
yeah. I learned uh, that it's very dangerous when you don't have the same context. So one of the statements I make in the book is that all conflict is from a lack of shared context. So, what I mean by that is your context is not mine. You have different life experiences, you have different motivations, you have different challenges every day. And until I can say I understand all of your challenges, I'm not in a position to help you, Daniel. And a lot of times people rush in and they want to give advice, and they want to say, do this and you'll get better, or do this, do this, do this. And they don't even know you, Daniel. How can they tell you how to get better if they don't take the time to understand your background, your interests, what motivates you, what their problems are? You have to listen first. And so what I'm learning is that life lesson will never be proven wrong, to seek first to understand people, and then you can be in a position to help them. That's something that I've learned. Another one I'll give you real quick: gratitude. The power of gratitude. I see it every day. Counting your blessings, and then being a teacher of happiness and positivity. People want to be around people who are happy and positive, and all of us have that ability. And so you can attract people to want to follow you if you are happy and positive, and that's a decision. So, Daniel, I'll end with this thought on that comment is that I've heard this expression: all greatness begins with two words: I decided. And so you have to decide that you will be happy. You have to decide that you'll be motivated. You have to decide everything, or else it won't happen.
Very well said, Mr. Paul. You earned your BS in environmental health from LSU and your MS from UT Dallas, and you're certified safety professional. Your credentials are impeccable. But at what point did you realize that credentials alone were not enough? That the real work was about connecting with people?
Yeah, pretty early in my career, I had responsibility for supervising individuals. And I think, let's just put it this way, a diploma just means that you got finished with something. It's probably not worth much else these days. It just doesn't mean a lot. Book sense is not common sense, and it's not business sense. And what they ought to teach in school, Daniel, is relationships, because I think everything in business can be solved by forming good relationships with people that you work with and people that you want to work with. And it's unfortunate that it has to come down to saying, "Hey, I got this piece of paper that says I'm qualified." When I don't, if I don't know how to build relationships and earn people's trust and do what I say I'm going to do, then it'll all be for naught. So, very early on, I think my very first job, I realized that the key to everything was relationships. And really, if you say, okay, what's the reason for my success, is because I focused on the people in my life and how I could work with them. And in particular, if we have time, I'll tell a very quick story. Um, One time during a merger, a coworker became my boss, and my feelings were hurt. And the coworker who became my boss said, "Hey, Paul, I don't know why they made me your boss. You're more qualified than I am." And so, Daniel, that's all I needed to hear. And I made a decision to allow that person to lead me. It's the best decision I made in my career, Daniel, because what happened was I gave him 110%. And about 2 years in, he went off to, to a startup company. And it was like 2 weeks after he started at the startup company, as he called me and he says, "Hey, Paul, what's it going to take to get you over here?" Well, that opportunity turned out to be just incredible. And under his guidance and leadership, I rose up through the ranks and became eventually a vice president. You know, Daniel, if I hadn't allowed Tom to lead me, none of that would have happened. None of it. That's a relationship, okay? If I hadn't built that relationship and said, "Hey, even though he's not as qualified as me, he could probably teach me something," I wouldn't be where I am today, Daniel, had I not done that.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, Mr. Paul. So empowering. You've spoken about promoting a culture of continuous improvement. How does the leading from the heart actually accelerate improvement? How does the heart add the data alone cannot provide?
Yeah, that's just wonderful. Getting to zero on safety incidents is the challenge that everybody has. And even if you get to zero, you're still not done because you could have an incident still. So safety is a challenge where you have to work so hard to keep it at zero if you get there. And the question becomes, are you operating on luck or are you operating on skill? Are you getting there because of your good actions and your programs, or are you just getting lucky? And so when you're motivated from the heart, you realize what's at stake and you're relentless in your seeking to keep everyone safe. And so there's not a more powerful motivator for you to be able to do that in terms of staying safe and focusing on people's lives. And so, for me at least, policies, procedures, you name it, that isn't as motivating and as exciting as the fact is I have the ability to get people home safe every day. And that's really what I care about. In the end, Daniel, when we retire or we stop doing what we're doing, we're not going to care about who we worked for, but we will care about the people that we worked with. Those will be the things that matter to us on our deathbed. We'll be thinking about people. So that's the motivator. If we can think about what matters to us in our last years on this earth, then we know where our priorities need to be.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Paul, and thank you for your legacy to the world. And to wrap up our discussion for today, after 35 years of leading safety in one of the world's most demanding industry, if you could whisper one sentence into the ear of every new safety professional just starting their career, someone who thinks the job is about checklists and compliance, what would you want them to hear about the heart and soul of this work?
Yeah, that wow. I do work with a lot of younger individuals, helping them to find meaningful work. And there's been a lot of here that we've talked about, but here it is. What do you want people to say about you? And whatever the answer to that question is, that's where your priorities ought to be.
Definitely think your legacy that people talk about you from generation to generations to come. So, Mr. Paul, let's continue these my two more podcasts because I have a lot more questions to ask. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your business, or whatever you want to promote on Abstract Essay?
Absolutely. I would love it if you would check out my book on Amazon or your favorite bookseller, The Heart and Soul of Safety, Leading Safety Performance from the Heart. It's not just for safety people, it's for people who want a little chicken soup for the safety soul. It's safety for the rest of us.
Indeed, people, let's support Mr. Paul Espenan because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering safety will rise. And again, Mr. Paul, thank you for your legacy to the world. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a joy having you and talking to you today. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Mr. Paul, more to come, people. See